Hi, I'm Daniela and this is Jocelyn. Thanks for coming to our channel.
In this video, we're going to share more about our NICU experience.
We have babies, we're wearing babies, they're in the background, some are in the swing, so bear with us if you hear any background noises. We have some guests today. Personally, the NICU portion of our pregnancy was my biggest fear. So I did a lot of research beforehand. Even so, with the research that I did, I don't think that I was prepared for the experience that you receive. So I wanted to share with you guys our experience, what we learned, and some key takeaways so that you can be more prepared if your baby's in the NICU.
Since the average gestation for a triplet pregnancy is around 32 weeks instead of the full term 40 weeks, we knew that a NICU stay was going to be an unavoidable part of our birth plan. For those who don't know, NICU stands for Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, and they are designed to help babies who need special care when they're first born. To learn more about the different NICU levels, you can check out this video we made using the link above.
For us personally, we found a level 4 NICU, and we're very grateful that we did.
The way our NICU was set up is that it had 5 or 6 nurseries that each handled a certain level of care. So Nursery A handled the most intensive cases, while Nursery E handled the least severe cases. Our babies, luckily, were all put together in Nursery D. As a parent of multiples, though, it's important to note that this is kind of rare. Since each baby can be born with their own set of needs, sometimes these needs aren't discovered till after birth. The babies can be split up depending on what they need.
Our experience with the NICU was actually very wonderful. From the moment we were in the delivery room, there was a team of nurses and a doctor who stayed with them throughout the operating room down into the NICU. Once they got to the NICU, they were evaluated, and then Jocelyn can tell you the rest because she was there while I was in surgery.
While Daniela was being operated on still after the babies had come out, their team of nurses took them up to the NICU, and I was able to go with them. Once we got there, they already had warm beds waiting for them to be fully evaluated. This was a lot for me because they each had their own team of nurses, they each had their own bed, so I kept having to pop back and forth between the 3 of them, like in a circle. They were all getting measured, they were all getting weighed, they were all getting IV catheters placed. The girls needed help breathing, so they were getting CPAP machines to make sure that their lungs were doing okay in the outside world. There was a lot going on, a lot of bodies, a lot of movement. I felt torn in 3 different directions. I didn't know how to split my time. Juniper, our little boy, was the strongest, so he had a little bit less going on as far as the interventions that he needed to help him.
Did they talk you through what was going on with each one, or you kind of were just watching?
No, so if I was out of bed with the baby, they would kind of tell me what was going on, but the problem was all of these things were happening at the same time for all 3 of them, so they were just doing their work, and I had to keep popping back and forth. So I'd miss some things and hear other things. There's a lot of cords and monitors and wires and beeping, so it feels really overwhelming when you're in it, especially right away. I remember I left my mask on and my full gown and garb and everything from the OR because I'm in a NICU. I didn't know what to expect, and they're like, you can take your mask off, it's okay, we'll show you how to scrub in. You had to use a special kind of a sponge with a brush and scrub up to your elbows for 30 seconds at the sink using a special soap before you were allowed to touch the babies. The whole time I was popping back and forth between all 3 babies, I was constantly asking, what is this monitoring? What is this machine doing? Why is this beeping? What's going on? I really wanted to try to understand everything that they were looking for and all the things that were important to know about a baby who needed intensive care.
We're very fortunate that for most multiples that are born, our babies were very stable. I wasn't there for that part, but Jocelyn came and gave me the great news that everyone was doing really well. When we got to the NICU, By the time I got up there, everything had settled down and each baby had their own nurse that I got to meet. By this point, it was like, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it was pretty late.
And they wheeled me to bed. I went to my room to recover a little bit more. And then Jocelyn stayed with me, but she would pop back and forth, check in on how the babies were doing at the NICU, and then come back to me. So we had a long first night, but by the second day when we went in, everything was less chaotic and much more organized, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. While Daniela was in the hospital recovering from her C-section, it was great because there was no pressure to be down at the NICU all the time. They really did put a precedence on your care and your healing. So they were there to reassure you that they're taking care of the babies and that we could pop down into the NICU whenever we wanted, day or night. So we tried to divide our time to make sure that Daniela was still able to rest and get her medications and check in with her nurses to make sure that her healing was happening. And then we would also go down to the NICU to check to make sure that the babies were progressing well and basically get an update on what we missed.
Everyone was very tentative to my needs as well as the babies. Something really excellent that we didn't share was that Jocelyn did go through a relactation process. She was able to lactate and make milk for the babies. And if you don't know, when you have a C-section, your milk doesn't come in right away. So she was able to provide her milk for the babies right off the bat in the NICU, and their first 48 hours of life, they had breast milk solely from Jocelyn, which was wonderful. So we got to meet our babies' nurses and learn a little bit about them and how they were doing. It was really scary at first, and I was kind of a nervous wreck. Like, I was afraid to touch the babies. I didn't want to change their diapers. I was actually just like sobbing every time I looked at them, but not sobbing because I was scared or sad, mostly sobbing because like I couldn't believe that I made these babies. And I quickly learned that the nurses and the care team were such a great support. The NICU was like preemie school. They taught us like how to care for them, being that they were so small, how to manage like around all the wires, how to hold them, how to breastfeed them, how to bottle feed them, how to change their diapers. I mean, Jocelyn was a pro, but when I went in there, I was such a nervous wreck. I was like, how do I even put this diaper on?
Something to expect as a NICU parent is that you'll get like full disclosure on what's happening. So if your nurse isn't telling you what has happened since you've been there last, don't be afraid to ask specific details. Did they go to the bathroom? How much did they eat? All of this is being recorded and documented in their chart because you want to make sure that they are getting everything that they need and are progressing well in order to get out of the NICU. Another thing to expect is that every morning or mid-afternoon there is a doctor who will go around and give updates to the nurses on how care should go. And I thought it was really important to be there because I got to ask the doctor specific questions and learn more about the progress. So I really tried to meet their night nurse during night shift and learn what's going on overnight around 2 a.m. while we were still at the hospital. But then I also would go make sure that I was there around 10 a.m. because I knew that the doctor was doing their rounds and I could get a little bit more information on next steps, where the nurses could kind of just tell us what's been going on. The doctor could give you a little bit more detail as to like the progress and where we need to be in order to be released.
You know, the baby's progress can change up or down on a daily, hourly basis. So one moment we were in there and everyone was in bassinets doing great. And then we left and came back and Willow was in an isolette, which is like her own enclosed bed. And they let us know that she was having trouble maintaining her temperature. They needed to put her in there to warm her up. So things can change, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's really bad or really good. New babies that are preemies, their bodies are learning to do all of the things that 40-week-old babies do already. So they have to maintain their temperature, learn how to eat, learn how to breathe on the outside world. So sometimes it's very difficult for them to eat, breathe, and maintain their temperature all at the same time. So if they go into the isolette for heat, that means they have more energy to eat and breathe, and they'll do a little bit better there. And then eventually we're gonna wean them down off the heat and put them back on room air and see how it goes. That's just one example. And I know that our babies were really fortunate that their temperature was like their biggest issue, and getting them to eat and hold it down. But otherwise, they were there to eat and grow and learn how to be babies. And we were there to learn how to be mommies to really small babies.
It was great that the nurses really encouraged us to be there during care time, which is when they started feeding and changing. If we were there during care time, then we kind of got more practice and they could teach us their own tips and tricks, which is awesome because they've cared for a lot more preemies than we have. So it was good to kind of have that insight that we could bring home with us and continue as the babies grew. Another thing that I think is important to note that I didn't really know about when we first went into the NICU was that you can ask to do skin to skin. Even though there are lots of wires and sometimes feeding tubes, as long as the baby is stable enough, they are really receptive to doing that. I know like at one time I was doing skin to skin with both girls at the same time. So that was something that you can definitely ask for and not be afraid to ask for.
Something I would recommend to a mom with their baby in the NICU is make sure that you're taking time for yourself as well. We all experience mom guilt from the minute they're born, and I wanted to spend every moment I could at the NICU, but I wasn't doing myself any favors because before I gave birth, my legs were really, really swollen, and that was taking some time to go away. So my legs were still really, really huge, and it was really painful to be on my feet. I would oftentimes go down in a wheelchair, but you still have to move from bed to bed, and even sitting in a wheelchair, like your legs are still down. When we were approaching the end of my hospital stay, the babies were still admitted into the NICU. So this was something challenging we had to face, us leaving the hospital and not being able to just walk back and forth, and now being home, which was more than 40 minutes away from the babies, and figuring out how we were going to care for me, make sure I had enough meals, make sure I had my pain medications, also be there all day.
Had all the pumping stuff that we both needed. It was a lot. I think when Daniela got discharged from the hospital, but the babies had to stay in the hospital, that was the first bout of like sad tears. That was really, really hard to get through without breaking down a little bit. I think both of us did.
Yeah, I think the nurses were like worried about me because I was just like sitting next to the baby's beds, like sobbing for an hour before we left. We finally left, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. Like, it was late. I didn't want to leave. It was tough being away from them. The cool thing was they did have cameras that we had an app for, so we could watch the babies on cameras and we could call at any time. So oftentimes we would watch them while we were waking up in the middle of the night to pump, and they were just like chilling in their bassinets, and then we could call the nurses to see like, oh, how much did they eat, how are they doing, things like that, until we got there.
The trickiest part was around day 6 of being in the NICU when Juniper was strong enough to be released and come home with us, but the 2 girls still needed some time in the NICU because once Juniper was released, he couldn't come back in with his sisters, so we really had to divide and conquer. I really give a lot of credit to the moms who have had to do this longer than 10 days. We were really, really fortunate that our littlest only stayed in the NICU for 10 days because those 4 days of going back and forth, having some with us and some not, was super stressful, was extremely overwhelming. It was a lot, I think, emotionally, physically,
mentally.
Yeah, it was tough.
The whole time you're there, you're worrying about your babies at home, and the whole time you're home, you're worrying about your babies that are there. There came a day where Eden was more stable and she got moved to a different part of the NICU, and Willow was still in the original part of the NICU. So not only we had one baby home, but I had 2 babies in different parts of the NICU. So I couldn't just sit with them both anymore. I had to sit either with Eden or with Willow, and then I was like missing care times because I couldn't just do both. And usually if we were both there, Jocelyn would do one care time and I would do the other. So that means that she would feed Eden and I would feed Willow. And then Junie always ate an hour before them. So we could always be present for all of what they needed until now. And that was like really difficult for me. I sat in the NICU like really sad because they were separated. And eventually they were able to like detach Eden's monitor and bring it over to Willow's bed so I could sit with both of them for a little while. But that was a hard few days for me as well. So we met a mom on our way out whose baby was, one of her twins was in there for so much longer while the other was discharged, and she lived really far away, and she also had a toddler at home. So like that makes it so much more difficult, and those are things you just don't think about. But we do the things we have to do for our babies, and we're just so grateful that we only had a 10-day NICU stay and our babies are healthy and thriving, and they really just needed to eat and grow. We only had 2 instances that were worrisome, where once Junie held his breath and he needed to stay in for 2 days longer because he was going to get released at 4 days when I went home, but he did have an incident where he held his breath. Then they needed to monitor him for 48 hours to make sure that didn't reoccur. And then Willow was going to come home 2 days sooner, and that also happened to her, so she had to stay, which made it 10 days. But other than that, we were just moving in a groove, and the babies were growing, so we were able to get them home with us pretty soon.
But we can't make a NICU video without stopping to give a huge thank you to our NICU team and everyone who helped the triplets along the way. I think it was such a blessing to have each and every one of you, and we're just so grateful that our team was just so amazing and so loving and helping us physically, emotionally, mentally. They were there for us as a team in ways that we couldn't even, expect. And
in ways that I never imagined.
Yeah. So we can't express our gratitude enough for helping us during that really intricate and delicate time.
Yeah, the hardest time of your lives. I mean, all NICU nurses, you're a special type of person. I did not expect to have as much support and love and care as I did from a NICU nurse, but they made my experience so amazing. I felt safe leaving my babies there, even though it was so hard. So shout out to all the NICU nurses out there. You rock.
If there's anything that we forgot to mention or that you were curious about knowing, we would love to share our experience, so please just drop it in the comments below.
We look forward to sharing more about our triplet journey with you, so check back again soon. See you later.